Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great, awesome. I'm quite sorry for the delay. I was experiencing a few technical hitches, but other than that, I'm happy to begin the meeting and to proceed. So thank you very much for joining this meeting today. My name is Diana Migan, and I am the content coordinator here at your pharmacy, and we're very pleased to host this meeting and to have you all. Tonight, I'm joined by a wonderful panel of speakers, beginning with Dr. Charles Opondo, Dr. Abigail Mutisya, and Dr. Sandra Kidula. Thank you so much, and you're very welcome to this meeting. Thank you for finding the time to join us today. So we will begin shortly, and I would like us to begin with a very, very brief icebreaker. And I would like to invite our attendees and participants to take part in this icebreaker by commenting in the chat section. So I'd like us to comment um, about which country, if we have ever thought of relocating from Kenya. I believe that most of our audience is from Kenya, and if you're from another country, that is still okay. You could still take part in the icebreaker. You could tell us if you have ever thought of one or thought about relocating from your country, and if so, to which country? Yes, please make use of the chat section and tell us, and let's interact just for 2 minutes before we begin this meeting. Yes, thank you. All right, Morgan Masemo says he would like to relocate to Switzerland. Okay. All right, Canada. Okay, I like your responses. Keep them coming. Helen says Canada. Tony says USA. Okay. Greece. Okay, feel free to comment why you'd like to relocate to these countries. Okay, we have someone who would like to relocate to the UK. Okay. Mbono, I see South Africa. Okay. Mike says Canada. All right. Dennis says, okay, let me read yours, Dennis. Rebecca says Canada. Okay. Okay, Nancy says Uganda. Helen says Canada because she hears that the people are very polite. Oh, we have another one who would like to relocate to the UK. Oh, someone would like to relocate to Kenya. Oh, wow, wonderful. Muturi says Scotland. Okay. Okay, keep the responses coming. It is indeed lovely to keep engaging with you. Someone, since Ruto came to power, he has been thinking of relocating every day, especially to Switzerland. Okay, Dennis. Okay. Betty says she would like to relocate to UK for work. However, she lacks the necessary information on how to. Okay, Betty, you're welcome because you are in the right place. Today, hopefully, we will be answering all your questions. And after this session, you will have all the information necessary for you to relocate to the UK. Okay. All right. So even as we begin this meeting, I would like us to bear in mind that we are to subscribe to this event in the PPB portal as it is CPD accredited. So kindly ensure that you have subscribed to this event in the PPB portal. In case you have any questions, feel free to make use of the Q&A section of this meeting to post your questions, and hopefully we will address them as time goes by. So without further ado, I would like to begin this meeting by introducing our speakers, and I will start by introducing Dr. Charles Opondo. So Dr. Charles Opondo is currently Associate Professor of Medical Statistics at the School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. He is the co-director of the Clinical Trials Unit at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. He is a statistician on secondment to the National Perinatal Epidemiology Unit at the University of Oxford. He holds a Doctor of Philosophy, PhD in Medical Statistics from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. He also holds an MSc in Medical Statistics from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and also a B.Pharm degree from the University of Nairobi. Welcome very much, Dr. Charles, to this meeting. I would like to invite you to say something to the audience before we proceed.
Thank you, and thanks for the invitation to speak here today, to share my experiences with you. Yeah, I hope you're going to find my sharing my experiences here useful in one way or another. Perhaps you're mulling a decision to move, perhaps you're mulling a decision to go into academia or higher education. I hope my experience will give you some ideas on how you might make that move. Thanks, Diana. Thanks for the introduction.
Thank you so much, Dr. Charles. We are very pleased and happy to have you here. Up next, I will be moving to Dr. Abigail. Dr. Abigail, just to know more about Dr. Abigail, she is the Pharmacy Quality Assurance Manager at Royal United Hospitals Bath NHS Foundation Trust. She holds an MSc in Pharmaceutical Chemistry from the University of South Wales. She also holds an MSc in Management from the University of Liverpool and a B.Pharm degree from the Nelson Mandela University. Dr. Abigail, I would like to give you this chance to say something to our audience before we proceed. And welcome.
I hope you can hear me.
Perhaps you could just project your voice a bit further.
Are you able to hear me?
It's still quite low, just a bit higher.
Hear me now?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Abigail. I go by the name Abby, and I'm so honored to be here, and I can't wait to have an interaction with other Kenyans and speak about life in the UK. And yeah, I just hope it will be fruitful to all of you. And it's really nice finally seeing Charles and Sandra as well. So yeah, I'm glad to be here.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Abigail. We are indeed pleased to have you in this meeting today. Up next, I'm going to be introducing Dr. Sandra. So Dr. Sandra is not a new face to this space. We hosted her in the previous webinar that was Kenyan Pharmacists Daring Abroad. We had her along with other pharmacists from another pharmacist from Malawi and another pharmacist from Australia. And today she will be joining us to talk about life in the UK. So Dr. Sandra, just to give a brief intro, Dr. Sandra is, just a minute. Dr. Sandra is currently a postgraduate student of pursuing Overseas Pharmacist Assessment Program, that is OSPAP, at the University of Brighton. She also served as a superintendent pharmacist and pharmacy team leader at Nairobi Hospital, Galleria Outpatient Center for the last 7 years, and she holds a B.Pharm degree from the University of Nairobi. So Dr. Sandra, we're very pleased to have you again, and you're welcome. Please say something to the audience.
Thank you, Diana, once again. It's good to be back. I am looking forward to hearing from my seniors as well. So I'm also here to learn and to share as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Sandra. So without wasting further time, we will dive right into the questions. And I would like to begin with Dr. Charles for this one. The first question is, what motivated you to choose the role you're currently playing as a statistician abroad, and how did you end up where you're currently working?
Thanks, Diana. Thanks for the question. So I get this question quite a bit, and I'm proud of people who I think through the course of their lives are able to chart a path forward for themselves and try and actualize it. My own path into what I'm doing now was not quite planned. A series of lucky accidents and opportunities that came up, and I happened to, take them as they were. So, of course, as I've been introduced, you all know I studied my B.Pharm at the University of Nairobi, and then as we all do, or at least as we all did, I gather things have changed a bit now. We often undertook a one-year internship in various aspects of pharmacy training. And then after that got posted, and many of us took up our postings. For me, it was at that point that I decided I wanted to do something else. And so at around that time, the Kemri Welcome Trust program was seeking research interns. The pay wasn't good. It was about a third of what I made as a pharmacist. But just because I was looking for something else, and also, the luck I had at the time that my circumstances allowed me to take a pay cut. So I quit my posting and joined the Kemri Welcome Trust program on a 6-month internship. Of course, that did not promise anything at the end of the 6 months. At the end of the 6 months, I would have had to find something else for myself to do. But as it turns out, there were various research projects that were starting up at around the time my internship ended. So when an opportunity to become a research assistant came up, I applied for that and, got a 2-year contract to be a research assistant. Of course, in all this, there was quite a bit to learn. If you all remember what our pharmacy training was like, I think we had just 1 term of research training in our final year. So not much research training. So there's quite a bit to learn. So, I joined this project as a research assistant. It was a clinical trial of some kind. So a clinical trial is, where you design some kind of an intervention. It could be medical. It could be quality improvement process. It could be anything of the sort that's not yet in application. And then you test it. So you offer it to some people or to some groups and not others. And then you try and see how outcomes vary between them. So I was involved in a trial, and while I was working on that, my then line manager made an interesting comment to me. He said, "You seem to have a good mind for mathematics and statistics." Well, I didn't know that. Why don't you consider applying for this master's program at the London School? So I did. So that was the medical statistics program. It was a bit of a shock when I started it. First, it was a 1-year master's program. Most master's programs across the world are 2 years. So a 1-year master's program is a crash course. So that was a bit of a shock. The second element of shock was it's a completely different system of education, something I'd never experienced before. Your lecturers didn't do much in the way of teaching. They did a lot in the way of guidance. And then as a student, you had to do quite a lot of the actual learning on your own. So you're provided with all the materials and tools and seminars. Then you had to spend quite a bit of time doing the actual learning. So that was a shock for me. And the third and obvious thing is a different country. The academic year starts in autumn, which is around this time of the year. It's starting to get cold. The days are getting short. By Christmas time, the sun is setting around 3 p.m., 3:30 p.m. And at night, it can be as low as -1 degrees. So that was a bit of a shock to the system. Anyway, there are interesting things about being in a new country, meeting new people, learning something new. So for the most part, I enjoyed it, completed it. And Then as soon as I completed it, an opportunity came up to apply for a PhD in the same project I was working on. And so I did. I mean, my options at that time was to apply for the PhD or to be jobless, because at least the PhD came with a funding, and my old role was coming to an end. So I applied for that, spent another 3 years doing a bit of work on that, and then at the end of that, an opportunity came up in my department at the London School to be a co-director of a master's teaching program, and I applied for that. And that's how I ended up staying in the UK. Between then and now, I've spent a bit of time at the London School, again, working in clinical trials, doing a bit of teaching, and I also spent a 7.5-year stint at the University of Oxford, again, doing a bit of research and teaching. And obviously, over time, one gathers a bit of experience doing this sort of thing. So one gets promoted up the ranks, gets more responsibilities, and that's how I've ended up where I am now. I hope that answers the question. I know it's a bit of a long-winded way of answering that question, but that's a summary of how I've ended up in my current position.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Charles, for that very, very, very elaborate response. We are grateful for allowing us to get the deep insights and the step-by-step of the entire process. And it was really, truly a leap of faith. And it took a lot of courage and boldness for you to pursue that line. So I would like to move to Dr. Abigail. And Dr. Abigail, we would like to know how you positioned yourself to obtain opportunities abroad. You have a bit of experience in South Africa, and you worked for a while in Namibia before moving to Kenya and then to UK, if I have it right.
Yeah.
So how did you position yourself for these opportunities abroad?
Well, the quickest answer would be I tried my best to make use of what I had and the opportunities available to me. So yes, I studied in South Africa, and then I did an internship in South Africa. This was a hospital internship, and it exposed me to quite a lot, including aseptic preparation of chemo, which I never knew that I would use again, which I am currently using. So that was that, but I was not able to register as a pharmacist in South Africa at that time. So then I came back home and I thought, well, I think it is important for me to register as a pharmacist in Kenya, so that no matter where I go, I know that whenever I come back home, at least I have the chance of practicing. So then I started the whole registration process, and I was working at that time. And then after that, because the South African system is similar to the Namibian system, so they recognized my internship in South Africa. So what I did is I registered as a pharmacist in Namibia, because there were opportunities for pharmacists there, and they were being paid really well, and the pharmacy practice was really good. It was similar to South Africa. So I thought, let me register as a pharmacist in Namibia, but still complete my internship in Kenya. So then I went to Namibia, just did the exam, came back to Kenya, did my internship, and then I started looking for a job. So this was now 2017, and I was also involved in I don't know if I should call them the demonstration, but there was a strike at that time, and we were now the interns at that time, and we were hoping to get opportunities, and it was really difficult for opportunities to come by. So then after I completed my internship in Kenya, I worked for 6 months as well, and then I got an opportunity in Namibia, and this was in a retail pharmacy. And it was a very good opportunity. I was flown to Namibia for an interview. I was flown back to Kenya, and then I went. The visa was all processed for me by my employer, who was really good. And then I was in Namibia for 2 years. So while I was there, I was thinking, okay, what next? And the reason why I thought what next is because I've always been interested in industry from the get-go. It's just that I never got an opportunity to join industry. The second thing was opportunities in Namibia were becoming less because Namibia was now, they now had a pharmacy school. So there were upcoming pharmacists. So in my current workplace at that time, I had to train a Namibian pharmacist. So, and this was set up by the government that all foreigners need to start training the locals, which was good. So then I thought, and actually at that time now, doctors, nurses, foreign healthcare workers started living in Namibia. People would get visas for 6 months, really short visas. So I had to come up with a plan. I really wanted to go back home to Kenya. And I remember at that time, my sister told me, she probably doesn't remember this, but she told me it's very important to do a master's, to be a specialist in something. And so then I thought, okay, the good thing about masters is that I think you should decide to do what you love. So then that's why that made me now look for opportunities for masters. UK was not really the place I wanted to go. I didn't really mind going anywhere. I started with the US because I thought, well, there must be numerous opportunities there. Then I managed to get the UK, and I went through UNISERV. I got a master's in pharmaceutical chemistry. The good thing about it is that it was really broad, so covered all aspects of industry, which I was obviously interested in. And so then that's how I moved to the UK, and I did my master's for 1 year. And then so I finished my master's in 2020, and it was COVID time. And at that time, we only had 4 months post-master's to look for an opportunity before visas expire. So it's not like it is now where you have 2 years. So then I had 4 months to look for a job, and I tried looking for a job in Kenya and in the UK, and I literally sat at my brother's house because he lives in the UK as well for 1 month, and all I was doing was applying for jobs. I applied for so many jobs. Luckily, I had a place to stay and I didn't have to pay rent, so that was fine. And then one job came up, which was a quality assurance officer role. And so then I took it. And so I just needed to get into the system. I'd never had that much experience in industry apart from the internship in Kenya, and obviously in the pharmacy degree, because our pharmacy degree, it's similar in Kenya as well, where you learn pharmaceutics. It's quite broad. It's different from the one in the UK, which is more clinical based. So yeah, I did that for 2 years, and then I got another opportunity in another company, and this was more advanced quality assurance role. And I did that for 2 years as well. But then I thought, okay, I think I need to move to the next level now. And so then what I did is, and this is what I would also advise people to do when you're looking to move to the next level. So I went to LinkedIn and I checked jobs, and I looked at the job descriptions, and I checked what is required for the next level in this field. And many of the jobs wanted me to be a certified auditor and to have a certification in quality management. So I enrolled for those, and so that gave me that now made me more marketable. And then this role came in and I took it. So this role currently covers everything that I've been doing for all these years, even though it didn't make sense me running from one country to another and all that. So it's pharmacy, and within the pharmacy, there is a clinical trials pharmacy, there is an aseptics pharmacy, radio pharmacy, there's wholesale dealing, there's inpatient. So I now come in as a quality expert with a pharmacy background, and it was just the perfect opportunity for me. So yeah, that's how I ended up where I am.
All right. Thank you
Yeah.
so much,
Thank
Dr. Abigail. That was very well detailed and very well put. So up next, I would like us to move to the whole registration process, which a lot of people have been asking about. So we'll direct this to Dr. Sandra. Dr. Sandra, you are the one who has recently gone through this process, and I believe you'd be better placed to answer the whole registration process, as you have done it most recently. So people, most guys are interested in knowing the entire process of transitioning to the UK, the key steps, the relevant documentation, and how long the process takes, and the bit about finances. So the last time we talked, you were in Kenya, and now you are in the UK. Maybe you could mention a bit about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. I know you said there are no slides to be shared, but I'm a very visual learner. I don't know whether that is possible. I can't see any. Oh, I've seen. Is it okay if I share a few slides? Just a few.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. All right, I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible because there's a lot, but I'll also share these slides in case anyone, because I've detailed a lot. So, there are different processes for EEA qualified pharmacists and non-EEA qualified pharmacists. So anyone who has not trained in the European Economic Area has to go through this process. So this includes us Kenyans. So there are three main steps, major steps. So you have to go through the Overseas Pharmacist Assessment Program, which is what I'm currently enrolled at. Then the second thing is to do 52 weeks, that's a year, of foundation training, either in England, Scotland, or Wales. Then after that, you sit an exam for registration. GPHC is simply the PPB of the UK, so the GPHC registration assessment, and you have to pass it. So the initial thing you have to do is to apply to the GPHC so that they see if you're eligible to study the OSPAP course. So they have to go through your documents and see whether your course is sufficient enough for you to actually do this course to register in the UK. So it's quite a lengthy process. The cost of application, there's a fee to that. It keeps changing over the years. When I applied, it was £687. I checked the website right now is about £739, but it might also go up. So it's good to check the website. So the things you need to give to the GPHC, there's a form that is on the website. I'll put a link there. So you fill that form by hand in block capitals. So there's a link there. When I share this, you'll be able to see. The other thing you have to do is something called ENIC Statement of Comparability. This compares your Kenyan degree to the UK qualification to see whether they match. So there's a charge to that as well. I've written 49.50, but it might change as well. So just check that website that I have put a link there. The other thing is an English test. You can do either OET or that's occupational English test, I think, or the IELTS test. I did the IELTS. I've seen right now is about 35,200 Kenya shillings. It may change because when I did mine, it was 32,000 shillings. So you have to have 7 and above in all reading, writing, listening, and speaking. There's a link to that as well. The other thing, you need your degree certificate, which has to be certified, and then a certified copy of your identity page in your current passport, then a duplicate or a certified copy of your birth certificate, and 2 countersigned passport photos. There are certain documents that have to be sent directly to the GPH, so you can't send them yourself because they need to be verified that they're actually genuine. So one of them is your academic transcript. That also includes any master's qualifications that you have. So this document has to be sent directly from the school to the GPHC. Also, when this is being sent, kindly confirm with them whether they have sent the right thing, because I actually realized University of Nairobi sent a different transcript from the one I have. So you have to confirm and make sure it's the right one. The other thing is a letter of good standing from now the regulator in your country. So for Kenya, that will be PPB. So you need to organize with the PPB to send it to them. Then 2 references, 1 professional, 1 academic, has to be sent directly. And these have to be sent with an official email. Someone can't send with a Gmail account. It has to be either at unbi.ac.ke. It has to have an official domain. So a tip with this, always ask the people or the institution to BCC you on the emails or to CC you so that you can make sure the emails have been sent, and also you have copies in case of anything. So it takes about 8 weeks from the date that you send your documents to receive feedback from the GPHC. Mine took about 4 weeks, so it depends what time you send. If you send during the busy times, it might take long. If you send during the less busy times, it might take a shorter time. So a few tips: always use a courier service that's reliable, so that you're not debating whether your documents reached or not. So I recommend DHL. And then when you're filling your application form, there's a part for work experience. Make sure you include every work experience from your graduation time. So that includes any volunteer work, any internship, because you can't have any gaps in your CV. It's not recommended. The other thing, which is very, very important, is to request your university to grade your transcripts. In University of Nairobi, our transcripts are just written pass. It's good to have them having GPA scores so that you know whether your score is a first class honors or second class upper, so that because you're competing with other students, so it's important to have a score to your transcript. Otherwise, they will grade it as a pass. Yeah. Then start early. Start at least 3 months before school applications open, so that once school applications open, you're ready to apply. The second step after you get your letter from the GPHC is to apply to the universities. There are only 4 schools currently in the UK that offer the OSPAP course. The first one is University of Brighton, which I am attending at the moment. There is University of Sunderland, Aston University, and University of Hertfordshire. So always apply to all of them. You may have a fixed mind you want to go to Aston University, but the spaces might be limited. So make sure you apply to all 4. It's extremely competitive. There are people applying from Kenya, from Nigeria, from Pakistan, from India. So you have to make sure you apply to all 4 so that your chances are higher. So a few tips about the unis. Applications open either September or October, and you have to be the first to apply. It's most of them it's first come first serve. Some of them depends on your grades. So make sure you are the first to apply. This the same day, the same minute applications open. So this is my experience from my application, which was last year October. For Aston University, it's first come first serve. So you have to be the first one to apply and submit within 30 minutes or less. It doesn't have an interview process. It doesn't have an entry exam. So most people prefer Aston University. The fees I've written there is for the 2024 entry. So it might change. Most likely it will change next year. So that's Aston University. There's postgraduate diploma and MSc. you don't really have to do the MSc, in my opinion. The postgraduate diploma is cheaper and it achieves the same goal. Then Hertfordshire only has the postgraduate diploma. It's also a first come, first serve basis, but it has an interview process, and also a pharmaceutical calculations test. So this one you have to apply as fast as possible. Then you have Sunderland. Sunderland is the cheapest at the moment. So this one usually it's on merit. It's kind of first come, but not really, because they're reviewed on a first come, first serve, but offers are given on merit. So you have to apply early, and it also has a calculations test. And yeah, it may not accept students with previous visa refusals. Then you have Brighton. Brighton is not on a first come, first serve basis at all. Applications are open and they take only upper second class honors and above. So this one you apply and then they send you a calculations test, which you have to prepare for. They tell you where to prepare from, and offers are given to the highest scoring candidates. Then let me try to rush through this. After that, you have to apply for pre-registration training, which is foundation training placement. This happens before you actually start school. I'm starting school this September. I applied for my foundation training placement in June of this year. So the training posts are paid positions. So the pay varies depending on whether you work in community pharmacy or hospital, whether you're working for the NHS or a private institution, whether it's Scotland or Wales or England. So yeah, I'll also share this to be able to go through that. Then I think you'll ask this later. Let me just stop there and then. But allow me to mention that this process is about to change. The GPHC sent us communication that they are going to change the process from 2026 so that you'll be able to do your OSPAP course and do your foundation training, so that the process won't take 2 years. It will take only 1 year. So keep checking the website to see whether there's any changes that will be made. I hope that is clear.
Oh, yes, thank you very much for the very wonderful slides. Thank you for sharing this information and the detailed step-by-step instructions. You had a slide on the student visa and the whole process. So someone had also asked about that. So perhaps you could just tackle it as well.
Okay, so let me just mention it. So for the student visa, once you get your offer from the school, they will send you something called a CAS statement. So it's a statement that shows they are willing to sponsor you for a student visa. Once you get that CAS statement, in fact, even before you get your CAS statement, you should prove to the school that you can, number one, pay for the entire school fees for the year. That is usually about £15,000. And then you can be able to afford living costs in the UK for at least 9 months. So when I was applying, the living costs for each month was £1,023. I just read last week that they've actually increased that. So you have to check the UK visa website to see how much it will cost. So a rough estimate would be around £10,000. So for you to be able to apply for the student visa, you probably need about £24,000 to £25,000 in your account at the moment that you're applying for your CAS statement, and then now you can apply for your visa. So the documents that you present to the school so that they can issue your CAS statement are the same documents you'll present to UK Visa and Immigration during your visa application. I used UNICEF as well when I was applying for my visa, and they made it so much easier. So I would recommend using an agency like UNICEF during that process.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Sandra. Still on the theme concerning visa, I would like to address this question to Dr. Abigail. Did you relocate on a visa or on a student visa?
I relocated on a student visa.
Okay. So based on that, I don't know if there's someone who relocated on a work visa. How about you, Dr. Charles?
I relocated on a student visa and then switched to a work visa.
Okay. So perhaps, Dr. Charles, someone is wondering whether it's easier or preferable when relocating to relocate on a work visa or a student visa. Could you be able to share your perspective on that?
Thanks for the question. I suppose it depends on your circumstances. So often people relocating on work visas are people who get a job offer while they're in Kenya. And often when you get a job offer, then your employer is the sponsor, quote unquote, of your visa. Now, sponsor doesn't necessarily mean the individual that will pay for your visa. They're just the person that, or the entity that lets the Home Office know that they need you here for a job or for studies, and therefore that a visa will be issued with a CAS from them. A CAS from them, or there's another term for this document, but it's a sponsorship document, which indicates the entity you're going to study in or the entity you're going to work in, and you use that document to apply for your visa. So for those who are relocating for work, usually you will have maybe applied for a job and gone through an interview, maybe remotely or in person, received a job offer, and then at that point your employer perhaps will have agreed to sponsor your visa, and then you'd be applying for the visa while you're in Kenya, and then once all those formalities are completed, then you move over. But if you're switching from a student visa, of course, that would mean that you'd have gone through that process while intending to come to the UK as a student. And then at the end of your time as a student, perhaps you've gotten a job offer, and then you can switch from your student visa to a work visa. That's relatively easier to switch from a student visa to a work visa than to apply for a work visa when you're in Kenya. It's relatively easier. The process is a bit simpler because you're already here. Yeah, I think that answers everything, actually. Yeah, I hope that answers the question, but do let me know if I haven't.
All right, thank you. I believe it's well answered. In case any part is not clear, feel free to seek clarification by typing in your question in the Q&A section. Dr. Abigail, the next question is for you. What difficulties did you encounter during the transition, and how did you cope with these challenges?
Well, the first one I can say is financial. So it's quite an expensive process, especially coming as a student. As Sandra has explained, you need a lot of money. So lucky for me, or I was blessed, my parents supported me coming here. However, once I got here, well, the pound is very strong. So when you convert your Kenya shillings to pounds, you realize that it's not that much, or it can't do as much as you thought it could do. So that, well, in my experience, I decided to now look for a part-time job. So when I was a student, when you're a student here, you're allowed to work 20 hours extra. And I can say normally those 20 hours would not be sufficient to maybe cover your fees or all those expenses. So you need to have that money, but then it can help you with your day-to-day groceries and all that. So I got a job in McDonald's, and I worked there for about 2-3 months. Then COVID came, and lucky for me, I was one of the beneficiaries of furlough. So the government gave me money for not working. So yeah, financial was one of them. Culture shock, being a minority, being a different race, coming from a place where majority are the same skin color as you, to a place where you really stand out, which can be a good or a bad thing, but getting used to that is difficult. Things are different here. The society is more individualistic. So people really just mind their own business, do their own thing. It's not communal like we're used to back home in Kenya or in Africa in general. But the good thing is that universities support a lot with mental health. And what this means is if you feel lonely, if you feel homesick, they're always open to speak to you. So they were really preaching about this a lot. And I immediately got in touch with other Kenyans here, so that was easy for me. And sometimes I would feel like I just want to give up and go back home. What am I doing here? So all that regret. But then I kept on reminding myself that there was a reason why I got here. I need to just keep going. The weather. So we're used to hot, warm weather, relatively warm weather, but here it's 4 seasons, and winter can be very cold and depressing. You learn to appreciate the sun, so it can be really depressing. So I was advised by one of my friends to take vitamin D capsules. Yeah, so the weather, you have to get used to that. Shared accommodation. So there's something called shared accommodation, which is not so popular back home, where because housing here is quite expensive, so many times you end up sharing a house with maybe you probably have your room, but you share a house with other people. And this can be either in uni or even when you start working and you're not able to afford your own place. So yeah, that's something that you have to get used to. And then just patience in the sense of you have to wait your turn to see a doctor, you have to wait your turn to get services. It's not that, oh, if you know someone, they can help you, fasten the process. You really have to just be patient and wait your turn. I think that sums it all. And I do see someone commented on the chat. For some reason, I'm not able to comment on the chat. Karima asked me if I did OSPAP. No, I did not do OSPAP. I came to the UK to do another master's that is not pharmacy related really. So I just came to do a master's and looked for a job like any other person. So, but I'm waiting for when it converts to 1 year, then probably I'll consider. But yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. The next question is for you, Dr. Sandra. Are there alternative pathways of relocating to the UK apart from on work visa or student visa?
So I think my colleagues have answered those very well, giving their stories of how they moved to the UK. But if you want to practice as a pharmacist in the UK, you have to go through OSPAP. The other question that I got a lot after the last webinar was whether someone can finish pharmacy school and move to and do the OSPAP without necessarily going through registration in Kenya. You have to finish your registration in Kenya. It's actually a good thing because if anything, you can always go back home. So you have to complete internship and then you do the OSPAP course. If you would like to practice in the UK as maybe in industry or maybe in academia, then you can go through the other process. But it's usually a student visa. If you're to come to the UK on a work visa, it's quite difficult to get jobs straight away in the UK because they give preference to their own people. So the easiest route, I think, would be to go through being a student.
Diana?
Yes.
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 On the same question, there was a question about those with families, those who are married, those who have kids, if they're able to relocate together with them.
Can I answer that?
Yes, please go ahead.
So it used to be the case. It used to be the case that a student could apply for a visa for their spouse and children to come to the UK. The previous government changed that rule for all students except those studying for master's degrees, or rather all students except those studying for PhDs. That may change again. I think a common theme in everything we are saying here is these rules, costs, processes, they are in flux. They change quite a bit. So it used to be the case that you could, as a student, but right now that's only available to PhD students, what they call research degree students. It also used to be the case that when you move to work in the UK, you can move with your family. That is the case now for certain jobs, but not others. I believe that is still available to pharmacists, medics, dentists. But the previous government withdrew that right to people coming to work as care workers and people working in certain parts of the NHS. Maybe I'm wrong about that bit. But again, you just need to check if you're coming as a student, if you're coming to work, you just need to check that for the visa you're applying for, that you have that permission. So the short answer is that it used to be the case. It's generally still the case, but there are some exclusions. So you really need to check.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that response. A lot of people have been asking about the master's opportunities in the UK. So perhaps Dr. Charles, you could give guidance on how to go about applying for master's programs in the UK.
Sandra described one method you can apply to get to the master's linked to the pharmacy program. But other master's programs which are not linked to training as a pharmacist or a medic, for those, you apply directly to universities. So you find a course of your interest. In my case, my interest was in medical statistics. Applications tend to open at around the start of the year. So you apply directly to the university. Some courses will involve going through an interview. So for my MSc, I went through an interview, a phone interview, which included a basic aptitude test in mathematics. Others may not. Others may solely be on the weight of your previous academic qualifications and experience. And then you would normally get a letter of offer around April, May, June time. And then you're then required to either make a deposit to secure your place or pay your fees in full. And then the academic year starts around this time, around in September. So that's one way to go about it. Obviously, in between that, there are various scholarship applications. I'm sure you will all have heard of them or looked into them, the Chevenings, the Commonwealths, various scholarships also offered by the universities. These are very highly competitive. They're really highly competitive. You often have to be outstanding in some way, either academically or in your work experience or in some other way. So those are quite competitive. One other thing that people don't talk much about, but I'd like to sort of highlight is master's programs by distance learning. So programs that take a little longer than a master's that involves coming to the UK. You can study master's by distance learning while still working in Kenya. It will take anything between 2 and 5 years. The qualification you get is exactly the same as the qualification you would get while doing your master's here. Obviously, there is the advantage that you get to do it while doing your job and while being with your family in Kenya. And also you don't, you avoid the cost of living in the UK and paying the cost of living in the UK. Living in the UK is quite expensive. I would say it almost doubles the cost of your MSc. So there are various distance learning programs across the UK that I would highly recommend, are worth looking into. And the reason I'm beating this drum is, again, as Sandra said, the job market can be competitive. And so one way to get into the job market would be to upgrade your qualifications. You could apply for a master's program, do it by distance learning. And then once you have that, then you're now competing in a different sector of the job market. That increases the likelihood that you could apply for a job while in Kenya and, called for an interview and then be offered a job and then come to the UK on the work visa route. So long and short of it, consider the distance learning programs as well. They are relatively more affordable in terms of the fees. They're also more affordable in the fact that you will not have to live in the UK, and it's quite expensive living here.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for even elaborating the bit about distant learning programs. That was very, very, very enlightening. The next question I would like to pose it to Dr. Abigail. This is concerning opportunities. So somebody is asking about, you have mentioned distant learning programs. Maybe perhaps you could comment about online working opportunities that exist, and as well as some, we have talked about the master's programs. Maybe you could talk about the opportunities that are lucrative, quote unquote, to practice in the UK, the ones that will best position you to get a good earning, and the ones that are on demand.
Well, one thing I can maybe start by saying is there are numerous opportunities in the UK. As you can see, we are all pharmacists, but we are doing totally different things. So UK gives you the opportunity to define your path. And in terms of online, I don't know about somebody who's in Kenya who's working for a UK company. I don't know about that. It's possible. But from my experience, actually, the job that I had before this current one was a remote job. So I was working as quality assurance officer for a company that offers, I can call it a pharmaceutical service provider. So we would provide pharmaceutical services to numerous manufacturing companies. And this was a French company that had a UK office. And I was working with people in different countries, in France and India and Tunisia and so many countries. So I didn't have to go into the office. So there are such opportunities available. In terms of pharmacy, so even if you register as a pharmacist and you work as a pharmacist, and I do work with registered pharmacists currently, they've really introduced flexible working. So we do have pharmacists that can work maybe one day at home, and because most of the things are now electronic, so they will maybe just go into the system and review the patient files from there and stuff like that. So flexible working is there. In terms of lucrative positions, I can say as a pharmacist, as a registered pharmacist, it's more structured. So you know that when you finish, and you get registered, then you'll probably start at, I think it's now maybe 37,000 per year or something like that. But if you want to go another route, like my route, so now I was now competing with everyone else, not just a pharmacist. So my start was quite low, much lower than that. But in industry is really broad. There's so many opportunities. So it's just a matter of going in there, knowing which route you want to take, and then just growing from there. There is a career ladder. There are opportunities there. So at the end, you will probably earn. You will earn as much as you push yourself to earn. Yeah. So pharmacists, I can say, for example, a head of pharmacy department in a hospital can be what they call band 9, which starts from about 99,000 per year, going to over 100,000, over 100,000. So there's a lot. It's quite diverse. I hope that
All right.
answers.
Yes, it does. Thank you for even mentioning the pay grade for different pharmacists. As a follow-up question, someone is wondering what opportunities exist or are available in industrial pharmacy.
So I can say that as a pharmacist, you are at an advantage because your degree is quite broad, and this is for pharmacists from Kenya. You are at an advantage compared to other countries that focus more on clinical. So you have a lot of industrial experience, and you even have an internship in industry. So you can fall in any spectrum of the product life. If you want to go into drug discovery, so if you look at the spectrum, you can go into drug discovery, clinical trials, production, quality control, regulatory affairs, pharmacovigilance, quality assurance, which I'm currently doing. If you love business, you can go into business development. You understand the product, you understand the pharmacology behind it, and this is really lacking in industry. So if you want to go into business development, you'll be going in there trying to promote your product and answering questions to do with the chemical structure of this product and how you can change things, how you can compete with other products. So it's quite broad. Yeah, so there's a lot there, and currently, I think what has also helped me is the Royal Pharmaceutical Society. So they have a very strong mentorship program, and because I mean, coming into a different country, I had obviously no idea even where to start. So I managed to get a mentor in there who's about, I think he's about above 60 years old. So he's a pharmacist in the UK. He's a regulatory pharmacist who's had experience in GSK and so many other companies. He's walked with me through this journey, and currently now I'm in the NHS. I got another mentor from Royal Pharmaceutical Society who has experience in NHS. So they have a strong mentorship program, and I also get to mentor other young pharmacists as well through that.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Abigail,
You're welcome.
for that response. Dr. Charles, someone is wondering, what are the prerequisites for someone interested in academia, particularly in the UK? And someone else is also curious about how much you'll earn as an associate professor.
Two questions. So prerequisites for academia, really just an interest. I think once you have a degree in pharmacy, a bachelor's degree in pharmacy, that's it. A lot of master's programs here will require you to have a bachelor's degree, obviously. Some may require less. But then from then on, really, it's about you identifying an area of academia that you'd be interested in. So I know pharmacists working from as far as health economics to medical statistics, epidemiology, like myself, clinical trials, education, ones were involved in teaching and research. So it's quite varied. I wouldn't say there's anything special once you have your bachelor's degree in pharmacy. It's really about identifying an area that you're interested in and pursuing an appropriate master's in that area. Pay, good question. One thing about the UK is for pretty much any job title, you could go online and search what the pay ranges are. So you could search what the pay range for my current job title is. So once you have a master's degree, you will often, if you're staying in academia, you will often start off as either a research officer or a research fellow. Pay in the research fellow bands are similar to what Abigail was describing, and of course they depend on which city you are in. In Oxford, that would have been about 37,000 per year, £37,000 a year. In London, that would be in the low 40s, maybe 42 to 45,000 per year. And then over time, as you gain more experience and you apply for promotions from research fellow, you could move up to lecturer or assistant professor. And then beyond that to associate professor, and beyond that, full professor. And the range of pay goes from the 37 that I have described to 120,000 or even more, depending on your responsibilities. So say if you're a dean of a faculty, your pay would be in the 120,000 range. Of course, that also depends on your skills, experience, and qualifications. So qualifications and skills and experience are rewarded. In fact, you will find certain roles where someone has maybe slightly lower academic qualifications than yours, but has so much more experience, and you find that their pay is similar to yours or even more than that. Because at the end of the day, your employer is interested in what you can deliver, and your skills do, your experience do count a long way towards doing that. Of course, academic qualifications are just as important, but your experience also does count a long way towards that. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does fully. Thank you so much, Dr. Charles. The next question is for you, Dr. Sandra. And someone is wondering whether there are useful websites or sources that one should be on the lookout, that is for job opportunities in the medical field or master's scholarships in the UK. Could you mention some helpful sites?
Maybe off the top of my head, I would recommend, if you're serious about doing a master's course in the UK, you can contact UNISERV. I found them helpful even before I considered doing the OSPAP course. I had considered doing my master's in clinical pharmacy. So I reached out to UNISERV, and they're able to tell me which universities offer. So because they search through, they tell you which ones have scholarships. So I'd recommend reaching out to UNISERV if you would want to do a master's course. However, they don't deal with full scholarship courses. So if you want to go through the route of Chevening or MasterCard Commonwealth scholarships, you'd have to research on your own. Just go to the websites and check which courses they have that give scholarships. But the caveat with those government scholarships is that you have to return to your home country for at least 2 years. So if you're considering relocating to the UK, probably that's not the route for you. But if you just want to cater for school and then go back home, that's a plausible route for you. I don't know if that answers the questions. With regards to OSPAP, finding out when the universities are opening applications, you have to keep checking the university websites. And keep checking the GPHC website as well to see if there are any changes in the process, because these processes keep changing. There's always new information all the time.
All right, thank you. Maybe as a follow-up question, for the sake of someone who had asked a question in the chat section, someone is wondering whether, maybe it wasn't clear, whether you were being paid as you were doing the OSPAP. If not, how are you surviving?
That's a good question. You are not being paid as you're doing your OSPAP at the moment. You have to prepare well financially. As Abigail said, it's a very financially draining process. So you have to plan yourself well before you come to the UK. You can do part-time work, like she said. You have to keep checking for part-time work even before you arrive in the UK. Luckily for me, our lecturer was very helpful in connecting me to a pharmacist in the UK. In Brighton, so I'm able to start my part-time work immediately. So you have to be very proactive to get part-time work. You can work 20 hours a week. Most student jobs, the regular ones, they pay about 10 to 15 pounds an hour. So if you do your 20 pounds a week, you're able to buy groceries and do the small payments that you need. So you can't really you're not paid, but from 2026, If all goes well, then people will be paid as because they'll be doing their foundation training as they're doing their OSPAP course. So that's something to look to in case you would want to move to the UK.
Thank you very much for that bit of information. We shall look for you in 2026.
Okay.
Diana, just a minute.
Yes, yes.
There's a question on WhatsApp for Sandy.
Mhm.
Dr. Otieno would like to know if the £24,000 that you mentioned
Mhm.
must be available during the application or
Mhm.
the requirement comes a little later.
The £24,000 must be available at least from a month before the time you apply for your cash statement from the uni. So they need to see that the money has been in your account for at least 28 consecutive days. So it's advisable to get it at least 2 months before you apply for your cash statement. Then now when you're applying for your visa, it still needs to be there by the time you're applying for your visa as well. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. I believe that also answers Tracy's question in the chat section. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Sandra. The next question is for Dr. Charles. Someone was asking whether there are clinical trial projects at London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine that one can join as a clinical research associate.
Yes, there will be from time to time. The thing about clinical trials, a clinical trial is basically a project. It's got its lifetime and it's got its staff. So what then tends to happen is those staff may have been people who are already working in other projects who have moved there, or they are staff that need to be hired afresh for those projects. And of course, the staff that are needed on a project depend on the nature of the project. Some of the trials we do, even though they are called clinical trials, that the phrase clinical trials basically means you're doing an experiment on human beings, but they may not necessarily be clinical in the traditional sense. So I've been involved in clinical trials that are testing interventions to improve well-being among secondary school children, for example. So it's not very medical in the traditional sense. So that may not require a clinical research associate. But then there are certain other trials. So I've recently been involved in a surgical trial that was looking at patients in ICU. And, that kind of a trial may require clinical research associate with the specific skills. And often when we need these, we will advertise them on the school's website. So if you're interested in that, you have to keep an eye on the school's website. We also advertise on certain external websites. So this sort of links to the question that was posed to Sandra previously. My favorite go-to website for jobs in academia is jobs.ac.uk. So just jobs.ac.uk. And you can search for a job by title and location. Because it's also important that you have some ability to choose where you want to live and work, because experiences across the UK are very varied. Some people may love London, others may want to be anywhere but London. Yeah. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Dr. Charles. The next question will go to Dr. Abigail. Dr. Abigail, a lot has been mentioned about the cost of living in the UK, and someone is wondering what are some of the best cities to live and work in, and how does income compare to the cost of living in the UK?
Well, as Dr. Charles just said, some people would love to live in London, some people would love to live anywhere but London. For me, that is true because London can be quite expensive, although you get everything you're looking for in it's a good place to be. There's a lot of diversity, lots of things to do. So just personal preference, where would you want to live? But maybe realistically speaking, it might be difficult for you to make that decision, and maybe your aim is just to get to the UK and get whatever comes and then start from there. And then once you're used to the place and you know how to get your way around the job market, then you can now look for opportunities in places you want to move to. So I'd say don't restrict yourself. For consolation, there are Kenyans everywhere. Some places, obviously, the cities are more expensive than smaller towns. In terms of cost of living, maybe the others can also speak from their experience, but a friend of mine had advised me that just make sure that you don't go past 33% of your net pay when it comes to your utilities and bills and all that. So it's quite high. Cost of living is quite high. For example, once you get your net pay, first of all, tax depends on how much you're earning. So there are tax brackets. Maybe you can just search more about tax brackets in the UK. So the more you earn, the more you'll be taxed. And then once you get your net pay, there are still other payments you have to do. For example, council tax, depending on where you live. So you have to pay the council, the ones who like make sure that everything in that area is being taken care of. It can be about £180. Utilities, electricity, and all that can be maybe £100 to £200. Then commuting, rent is also a very expensive thing. That's why shared accommodation is usually preferred when if you're not able to have your own place. Shared accommodation can be roughly about 600. So it's an expensive place to live in. I think it's good to have pounds outside the UK. When you go to Kenya, you'll really enjoy with your pounds. But when you're in the UK, it's quite expensive, and you really have to budget and restrict yourself. So it requires a lot of discipline.
All
Yeah,
right. Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah. Unless there's anything else that anyone else wants to add, yeah, I think that's all I have.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Abigail. Dr. Charles, would you like to comment on the same?
Yes, no, yeah, very much agree with what Abigail has said. The cost of living, I think the biggest driver of the cost of living here is accommodation. As Abigail said, most people would spend anything between a quarter and a third of their take-home pay just on accommodation. And then, of course, there's all those bills. So, there are various ways to deal with this. The shared accommodation is one way. What some people do, so for example, I have my job in London, but I don't live in London. I commute from where I live in South Oxfordshire, and that involves, cycling, riding a bicycle to the local train station, which then takes me into London. It's about 40 minutes on the train. And then once I get into London, I cycle to the office again. So there are various ways, that people deal with this. Some people live much farther away from London than I do. So I had a colleague that lives in Leicester, which is farther up north. And, because at the moment we don't have to be in the office 5 days a week, they come down to London on the days when they need to be in London, and then they, maybe they rent a room for a night or two, or they go back. So there's various ways you can make it work. But I think the important thing to emphasize is the cost of accommodation is quite a bit, and the closer you are to big cities, the more it is. And you therefore have to have an open mind about where you live and how you'll deal with it. It's nice being in a vibrant city. There is something to be said about living in a small, peaceful village as well, not just for your peace of mind, but also for your pocket. But this is a personal preference thing, really. I can't tell you that one way is better than another. It's just down to personal preference.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Charles. I believe there's a question for you in the chat section. Someone is asking, what are the current data analytical tools skill sets required in the UK for PhD students, e.g. R, Python, etc.?
A good question. That's right down my alley. at the school, our main tool for statistical analysis is the software tool called Stata. So it's commonly used in medical research, but also in the financial world. A large proportion of my colleagues also use R for statistical analysis. I know there are a number of Python programmers as well. I don't trust people who use snakes for statistical analysis, but hey, and various other tools, but the commonest really are Stata, R, and a few Python users, and various specialist tools as well for specialist applications.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Charles. The next question in the chat section is, I will address it to you, Dr. Abigail. Someone is asking that she had been told to join the HCPC board, and she's wondering whether it includes pharmacists.
Well, pharmacists would be registered with GPHC, which is a General Pharmaceutical Council, and the equivalent of PSK would be Royal Pharmaceutical Society. So I think if you want to practice not as a pharmacist, but maybe I'm not sure what HCPC covers, but I know that they cover other professions that are not pharmacists. So no, if, as a pharmacist, those two, GPHC and RPS. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The last question before we wind up to the closing remarks, I'll address it to you, Dr. Sandra. Is the environment currently suitable for pharmacists wishing to relocate? Would you encourage more pharmacists to take this step? How is the environment?
I think I am very young in the environment, so I would prefer my other colleagues, Charles and Abigail, to help me also know the answer to that question. Yeah.
I can make some comments on that just based on my my attention to UK politics. So one thing about the structure of this society is it's an older society in the sense that a large chunk of the population is older, and therefore society in general has lots of health and medical needs, and that's just going to increase over time. This is one of my favorite things to discuss because it has lots of political implications. But because society is aging and there are fewer and fewer babies being born in this society, its health needs are going to increase. So the industries such as pharmacy, medicine, dentistry, and all that, the demand for those services is only going to continue going up. And then with fewer and fewer people entering the job market, my belief is over time, and already it's the case, there's always going to be a need for foreign trained doctors, dentists, pharmacists, nurses, and all those other entities. To me, the only difficulty is this factor that foreign trained pharmacists need to convert their qualifications to something that's acceptable to the UK. And it's a good thing because it's a totally different environment. The demands that the system makes on you as a pharmacist are very different from those that it makes from you as a Kenyan pharmacist. So it really is appropriate that conversion is there. But to me, that's really the only hurdle. And if you can get yourself over that hurdle, you will never lack opportunities in this country. That's my personal view. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr.
Maybe
Charles.
I can
Dr.
add as
Abigail?
well. Yeah, so pharmacists at the moment, correct me if I'm wrong, they are in the shortage occupations list. right? So that means that it's easier. Some restrictions have been lifted, so it's easier to come in as a pharmacist and register and get an opportunity. So I think now is the time to take advantage of that. And you coming here and setting yourself here and getting this experience doesn't mean that you can't go back home. So I think it's always good to try, see where it takes you. There's a lot going on here. You can always come, get the experience, take it back home and share it with other people. And as I said, it allows you to define your path. So if you want to just go into something completely different, the opportunities are there. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Abigail. And we are almost coming to the end of this webinar. I would like our panelists to answer 2 last questions as they give their closing remarks. And the questions are, 1, reflecting. Yes?
Before the closing remarks, did we touch on this question? Is there an age limit for migrating to the UK as a skilled worker?
All right.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry.
no, sorry. Okay, maybe Dr. Sandra would like to go. Is there an age limit for skilled workers?
When I was applying for my OSPAP course, I did not see an age limit. So I'm not sure if there is one, but I don't think so. Maybe Dr. Charles, you can help with that.
Yeah, I've never seen an age limit in any aspect of applying either to be a student or to work. So as far as I'm aware, there is none. Of course, keep in mind the retirement age here begins at 65. So you definitely won't be getting a work visa if you're close to that age. But you can apply to study. I've had a class of people who've actually retired, who've come back to study for something. So you can absolutely come to the UK as a student, regardless of age.
Dr. Charles, does the retirement age depend on the qualification you have? Let's say if you have a master's, if you have a degree.
Sorry, you're muted.
You're
Dr.
muted,
Charles.
So sorry. So it doesn't. So I know that people who've worked as nurses can choose to retire from the age of 60. I think teachers as well can choose to retire at 60. But the sort of mandatory retirement age begins at 65. Again, that is also going to change. As I said previously, this is an aging society. There are more and more older people and fewer younger people. I know things like pensions and taxes and all those depend on more working people. And then it becomes more expensive to pay for the older people. So the way the government is dealing with that is it's gradually increasing the retirement age. So no, it doesn't necessarily vary, but there's a mandatory retirement age. It was 65, it's heading towards 68. By the time we retire, it may be 72. I don't know, but it's increasing.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Charles, Dr. Sandra. On to the final portion of this discussion. 1, reflecting on your journey of daring abroad. What is the one thing you wish you would have done differently? And as a parting shot, what advice do you have for young pharmacists or fresh graduates looking to relocate to the UK? We shall begin with you, Dr. Abigail.
Well, I think I tend to look at things like lessons, and it's really difficult to say that to regret and say maybe I should have done this differently. But what I can say is I can give you a short story. So last year, I actually burnt out in my workplace, and this was as a result of my colleagues. So there were 2 of us working in a department, and then she was more senior to me, and she left, and then I was the only one there. And then I took on her job as we were waiting for the replacement, and I think I pushed myself a bit too hard, and I think as a foreigner, you have to be conscious about that, because sometimes you want to prove yourself. You're new here. These people are different. You sometimes feel like an imposter, or you want management to see you. All those things. So I ended up pushing myself, and it was damaging to myself. So learn how to say no. Learn how the best way to say no in a respectful way. Be more self-aware and work on your self-confidence. And if you need guidance and support on that, speak to someone who can guide you on that. So because of all that, what I decided is to start my own career path. So then I'm now training to be a qualified person, which certifies batches. It's like a dream job for quality people. And so then I'm doing that alongside my work, just so that I keep reminding myself that, look, my career is in my hands. So I took the control back, and now I take jobs that I know suit my career path. Yeah, so I think, yeah, that's one thing. And I would just advise pharmacists in Kenya, those who want to come to the UK or go abroad, be patient. It takes time, it takes years. Be kind to yourself. It can be quite challenging, especially when things don't work out. As long as you've done all that you can do, don't beat yourself. Be kind to yourself. Don't compare yourself to other people. You have your journey. Focus on your life, build it. And if you come to the UK, we are here. We have a group. We try to support each other. There are many Kenyans here, so you won't be alone. And I think you can always reach out for those who would like to divert from the normal pharmacy route. I'm happy to speak to you about that. Yeah. Thank you.
Doc, does your group have a name or maybe an online presence?
Yeah, but we started it for pharmacists who are currently in the UK. It's not an official group, but it's just somewhere where we just go and talk about issues that we're having and just support each other.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Abigail. Next, we can move to Dr. Sandra.
I guess what I would do differently, which I believe I did later, is to get a pharmacist who's already in the UK, who has gone through the process that I am going through, which I did get later in the process. But it's good to get someone who will tell you the pitfalls and what to do, so that you're not going through it alone. It's not a one-man journey. It's good to have someone holding your hand through it. I think also, like I said, the things I would do differently, I've actually put them in my slides. Getting your GPA scores graded, because like for my University of Brighton, they had actually declined to give me an offer because they said my grades are not are below the standard because they were not graded. So getting that early so that you can submit it with your application. Applying quickly to the unis. I didn't know how fast I needed to apply because the application's open and you have to put all this information. The time you click submit, you're among the second batch to sub. People had already submitted 10 minutes earlier. So applying as fast as possible and clicking that submit button as fast as possible. You can edit things later. Just make sure you submit as fast as possible. What else? Don't pack too many things when you're coming to the UK. You don't need all those things. Just get maybe the sentimental things. You'll get things here, so don't pack too many things. That 23 kilos times 2 is more than enough. What would I tell a young pharmacist? It's good that you have this information now. We didn't have this kind of information when we had finished school. So it's good that you have this information now. You can start planning. It's a very expensive process. If you can get financial assistance if you want to do the OSPAP, if not, then you can go through the MSc. So just find which path works for you. Yeah, I guess that's it. And if you need any guidance, you can always send me a message on LinkedIn. I am willing to assist anyone who's looking for guidance.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Sandra, even for offering to help anyone who might need the help. Thank you so much. Finally, Dr. Charles.
Thank you. There really isn't much more to say than what Abigail and Sandra have said. Actually, my experiences have pretty much, been the same. I think if you were to ask me something that I would have done differently, I might say, maybe I would have been a bit more decisive in making the decision to move. Because, for me, I came to the UK and left the UK several times over a period of 5 years before finally deciding to stay. Maybe that's what I would have done differently. But again, the circumstances at the time were such that that was probably the best thing to do. So I can't really say that I, would have necessarily decided that at the time. But my advice to people would be, to be open to experiences. So, this qualification we get as a pharmacist, it's really good in the sense that, you get mastery of a really important aspect of life, healthcare. And with that, you can go into so many different careers, some of which seem quite remote to, being a pharmacist. I mean, myself, my current title is medical statistician. Now, I never heard of such a title actually until I applied to do a master's in medical statistics, and also on a whim, just because somebody else thought that that might be something that was appropriate for me. So I think just being open to different experiences in terms of even work, could land you in a career you never knew existed, but that you find that you quite enjoy, because that's where I've ended up. Then in terms of seeking to relocate, so Abigail and Sandra have shared some really good tips with specific examples of sources of information for what you need to get on this journey. One thing that I usually find quite annoying and quite irritating is when, people decide for themselves or think for themselves that there's a shortcut to going through all those steps. There isn't. And if you think there is, you're going to end up in the hands of someone who will take advantage of you. This process, pretty much every bit of information and every process you need is online. It's going to be on some government website somewhere or some formal entity's website somewhere. It's not going to be hidden anywhere. Everything you need to know really is there. And if you need help, you could speak to people who've gone through the journey to give you some tips. But I would strongly discourage you from falling in the trap of someone who suggests to you that they could help you take a shortcut here or a shortcut there, because that's just not going to work. That's just not how this society works. You're just going to lose your money and you're going to end up frustrated. So all the information is out there. And if you need advice, Sandra's offered. I'm happy to talk to anyone who's interested in a career in academia. And obviously you can speak to Abigail and other people who who've gone through the journey. So that's all from me.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Charles, Dr. Sandra, and Dr. Abigail for those nuggets. Thank you so much for your advice and for willingly sharing this information for us to learn from you. Someone is asking if you could kindly share websites for remote jobs. Are there any that you could think of, Dr. Charles?
Right. So the jobs.ac.uk link that I shared would be a good place to start. There'll be all sorts of jobs there. Some of them will be full-time in person, some may be remote. But that's a good place to start. Increasingly in the UK, jobs are remote or hybrid. So yeah.
Well, I got my job through LinkedIn, the remote job. So if you go into LinkedIn and you specify remote, you'll get opportunities. I'm just not sure if they're willing to have someone in Kenya, but it's always worth a try. Yeah. And also Indeed.com. So that's where I got my first job. Maybe not only remote, but those two websites are very useful for jobs.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Abigail and Dr. Charles. We have come to the end, but before we wrap up, I would like to ask if anyone still has a burning question. I wouldn't want to lock anyone out. So if you have a burning question, feel free to type or raise your hand so that we unmute you.
While we are waiting for a question, I think I'd seen a question somewhere regarding what relocation is like with a family or with children. I think someone had mentioned something along the lines of whether one could do this as a single parent. So I'm not a parent myself, so take what I say with a pinch of salt. So when you move to the UK with children, your children to some extent become a ward of the state. In other words, the state is interested in whether they're in school or in their welfare and all that. So one of the first things you must do is you must register them in a school. They must attend school because it's mandatory. Indeed, you can be fined if your children are not in school. You have to drop them in school in the morning and you have to pick them up from school in the afternoon. So that may be difficult if you have a full-time job. The advantage, though, is that most employers will give you some flexibility when it comes to, the school run, the so-called school run, dropping your kids and picking them up. So it's going to be difficult, and you need to understand that you will have to do that, but it is not impossible. I know people who've managed to do it, but it's going to be difficult if you're trying to do that as a single person, but it's not impossible. So you just need to be aware of all that. You're unlikely to be able to afford a house help because all workers must be paid the minimum wage. So if yourself, you're earning maybe twice or thrice the minimum wage, that means that you'll have to factor in a third of your income to pay a house help. So it's just out of question. You'll have to do all these things yourself. It's difficult, but not impossible. And take it with a pinch of salt because it's coming from a non-parent.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Charles, for addressing that very, very, very important concern. I believe there are no further questions.
Dana?
Yes?
There's a question on the chat section. Okay, I'll
Yes.
post it. A minute.
Okay.
Just a minute.
While you're getting to the question, someone's dropped me a message just to remind me to indicate that education, school is free. That's primary and secondary education is free for children, unless you take them to a private school. And healthcare is also free. Well, it's free to the extent that we pay for it through our taxes. So it's not entirely free, but it's free at the point of use.
Dana, the question I was looking for, I can see you guys have already responded. Someone was asking for the two websites that Dr. Abigail mentioned. So that's Indeed.com and LinkedIn.
All right. Thank you so much. I believe there are no further questions. I really hope I'm not locking anyone out. Going twice. All right, I think we can end this meeting. At this point, I would like to thank our panelists. You have been truly, truly amazing and truly, truly insightful and of great help. Thank you so much, Dr. Charles, Dr. Sandra, and Dr. Abigail for finding the time to attend this webinar and share freely this knowledge that you guys didn't have easily at your disposal, but thank you for making it freely available to us. And we believe that we are better than we came to this meeting. And I believe that those who are seeking to relocate to the UK are better placed to do so and to begin the process. So this has really been very helpful and we are so grateful. Thank you to Your Pharmacist Diary for offering this platform to host this webinar and to share this information and make sure it's out there. The recording will be made available in due time on YouTube, but in the meantime, you could follow our WhatsApp channel for more regular updates. The link is in the chat section. Aside from that, I'm not sure there's anything else. So thank you so much for finding time to attend this. Oh, and yes, remember to subscribe to the event on the PPB portal in order to get your CPD points. Yes, and other than that, I'd like to bring this meeting to a close. And thank you so much to our panelists. Have a good night. Yes, it's night time here in Kenya.
It's nighttime here as well. Thanks for
Yes.
organizing. Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Okay. Feel free to leave.